leaving ever less of a circulation to sustain the industry and commerce which are obligated to service the escalating sum of falsified indebtedness. Not only is it important to understand that this process is irreversible because we are compelled to maintain a vital circulation merely to persist in servicing falsified obligations which exceed the initial circulation of such a system many times over. It is vital for us to understand then that because maldisposition is irreversible, it is likewise inherently and inevitably terminal. But maldisposition is not only terminal. Because it dedicates ever more of any circulation to servicing of falsified debt, a fact of maldisposition too means that it is not enough to merely solve circulatory inflation and deflation to achieve a currency which does service, a currency which is immutable. Why not? Because even if we did maintain a circulation which were equal to the remaining value of represented property, maldisposition prevents us from even dedicating so much of the circulation to that vital purpose. The only possible immutable currency, therefore, is a currency which is altogether free of circulatory inflation, deflation, and maldisposition. The only possible just currency, therefore, is a mathematically perfected currency, which is wholly dedicated to representation by eradication of interest, and which, by an obligatory schedule of payment, retiring principal at the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property, perpetually preserves a 1-to-1-to-1 relationship between remaining circulation, remaining value of represented property, and remaining obligation to pay just that much for the remaining value of represented property. In other words, as we pay out of circulation for what we're consuming of the property, the remaining circulation always equals, merely for the schedule of payment and eradication of interest, the remaining circulation always equals the value of the remaining value of the related property. Mathematically perfected economy, therefore, makes the very property it represents the only possible perfect backing of the resultant currency, because only in mathematically perfected economy is the entire circulation always redeemable in the very remaining value of the very property every unit of the circulation represents. The value of the circulation is always fixed to the remaining value of represented property by mathematically perfected economy and mathematically perfected economy alone. Mathematically perfected economy, therefore, effectively makes the very property it represents the only possible perfect backing of the resultant currency, because only in mathematically perfected economy is the entire circulation always redeemable in the very remaining value of the very property every unit of the circulation represents. It is impossible to represent our production by any other proportion or any other process. So, we have shown over and over and over again how mathematically perfected economy alone solves the three potential categoric faults of any prospective monetary proposition. We have shown over and over and over again how mathematically perfected economy alone solves these potential categoric faults, even without regulation, by its obligatory schedule of payment, retiring principal at the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property. Not only does nothing else accomplish this vital purpose, mathematically perfected economy even does this without any need for regulation. Because, of course, its obligatory schedule of payment automatically regulates the circulation to whatever value we the people have decided the circulation should have. In truth, mathematically perfected economy is likewise the only free enterprise and the only truly free market system. So we have demonstrated what these three categoric faults of any prospective monetary thesis are. They are firstly circulatory inflation, deflation, and/or maldisposition. Our second prospective categoric fault is systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property. And our third and final categoric fault, the third of only three things we have to understand, can possibly be awry, is inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of artificial indebtedness by the unwarranted imposition of interest. How does mathematically perfected economy solve all these faults? It solves our first categoric fault, or circulatory inflation, deflation, and/or maldisposition, by eradication of interest and its obligatory schedule of payment. This and this alone maintain a circulation which is always equal to the remaining value of represented property and always fully disposable to that as well. Is there any other possible solution of circulatory inflation, deflation, and/or maldisposition then? Absolutely not. Deviate from that prescription an iota and you do not solve circulatory inflation, deflation, and/or maldisposition. Furthermore, you impose a need for regulation. Mathematically perfected economy solves our third categoric fault by its eradication of interest. My work proved why and how interest is inherently terminal, why there is no such thing as some ostensible difference between interest and usury. Any rate of interest which must be borrowed back into circulation inherently and irreversibly multiplies falsified indebtedness in proportion to a vital circulation. Any practical rate of interest which is profitable to a purported banking system, therefore, is not only usurious, but it is so usurious as to be inherently and inevitably terminal. Our second categoric fault, or systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property, is solved by the integral combination of our first and third solutions, because these are the only powers of an obfuscated currency to wrongly influence the volume, disposition, or terminal consequences of any prospective monetary thesis. Can we understand our problems in any lesser terms then? Effectively, we accomplish all this by simply restoring our promissory obligations to their rightful obligations. But we don't understand that without understanding all of what we have just explained yet again. Are these radical ideas? Absolutely not. They are only the bare truth. Are they complicated? Or is the language I have used to explain them too challenging? What other words are merely correct? What is too complicated that we cannot understand from just this little? Not only that mathematically perfected economy is the only prospective monetary solution, but that we could establish mathematically perfected economy, as I have shown, in as little as a day, and at virtually no cost whatsoever. So we have not only proven singular solution, we have likewise proven its vital need, and a singular just means even of transforming any of the present systems of exploitation into mathematically perfected economy, not only immediately, but even virtually without cost. All we have to do is refinance all our debts, counting all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, and this itself will resolve most of the world's present debt. Moreover, it would rectify all remaining debt to what it ought to be. It would make people who are suffering from foreclosure and bankruptcy instead many, many months, if not years, instead ahead on their payments. Why persist in the terminal system? And how is it that we are persisting in the terminal system? But our own division, our own abstinence from giving these few simple matters due diligence. We can all understand these things. Why don't we? So what are we up against? How are we going to achieve our goals, but as we have prescribed in our mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation? Who and what then are our greatest enemies? If in just for the few minutes we have just now dedicated to these issues, the whole world could have freed itself from terminal exploitation. Who is against us? Who more so prevails in perpetuating the crimes against us, but we who refuse to dedicate such little diligent effort as to hear the only message which can save us? As I have said, 43 years have tested a proof of inevitable failure. I provided the Reagan administration with computer models which in 1983 and 4 projected that the present failure would transpire at approximately 2010 AD. The stench of that unnecessary failure is now everywhere around us, and we have only begun to witness its terminal consequences. On the one hand, then, we have this prospect of inevitable terminal failure. We have a proof of one mathematically perfected economy, which proofs we just now, once again, have given to you. We also have a proof of a singular just means of transforming the present terminal systems of exploitation into mathematically perfected economy, not only immediately, but even virtually without cost. On another hand yet, we have government installed across the world by the purported financial industry, preserving this crime against us. All the while telling us a lie, that the present conditions are temporary, that we will recover, as in fact we have never actually recovered, from perpetual multiplication of artificial indebtedness, because that, in fact, is impossible. We have the very purported banking system, the so-called Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal nor a reserve of anything. We have these private corporations, like every other central banking system of the world, lying likewise to us, telling us the same lie,